Hello and welcome to GuyLogicGaming. My name is Temco and today we are taking a look at Rain World. Developed by Video Cult and published by Adult Swim Games, Rain World is a game all about you being a slug cat. Yes, a slug and a cat. And you are set in a post-apocalyptic type of world where you are sent to survive, harness your powers of slugginess and cattiness, and traverse a variety of unique settings, terrains, rooms in a diverse set of regions. It's a mix of puzzle platforming as well as survival, and it does so in quite a few unique ways. But before we dive into the gameplay proper, let's take a look at the options menu and talk a little bit about PC performance and everything related to that. So heading into options, you can already see a couple of things that are a little bit off. First things first, the screen size resolution only goes up to 1366 by 768, which is weird. I have never seen a game in the last couple of years not support a full range of resolutions, at least 1080p for fuck's sake. This is unacceptable in every way, shape or form. Yes, I understand the art style and I understand the scaling of levels and I understand all of that, but that does not make it okay. This is weird. Playing the game in windowed mode also doesn't really let you resize it, so there really isn't an excuse for this type of shitty resolution scaling. That said, the game is in 6 languages. As far as anything exists in the game in terms of language, it's very minimal in terms of text, explanations, or anything of the sort. The game does have a music and sound effects slider. There is no dialogue. And even though you can't hear music because apparently there weren't enough tracks, so just sort of left silence in. The game does allow for full keyboard rebindings, and you will definitely want to do that because the keyboard controls are absolutely dreadful. So far, you might be thinking I'm very negative on the game, and that's mostly because the options side of things is actually really bad. It's like developers spent the last couple of years thinking about their art style as an art project and not looking at this as a technical piece of software. And that's a damn shame. Now the game does have a reset progress button and several save files if you want to try out different things. But the rebindable keys are a nice touch which you definitely need because by default the game doesn't use the mouse. It follows the keyboard. You can play with both Xbox and PS4 DualShock controllers, but try as I might, I could not get the Steam controller to work on the machine at all. And even though you can rebind all the gamepad buttons if you so desire, it still doesn't feel that great. The controls aren't precise, they feel very fiddly, and they just sort of provide a very annoying experience overall, which really drags down the overall game experience. Using a mouse and keyboard, or in this case just a keyboard, really does result in serious issues with which keys does what. There's a crouch and jump button that you have to combo press, obviously because a controller has less buttons so you can't do as many actions on it, clearly designed for a controller in mind, and then just sort of adapted to a random mishmash of buttons and locations that don't make a lot of sense. I've rebound all of these for my own personal preferences, and I strongly urge and suggest you do the same if you are interested in this title. Now, as I said, I may sound negative on the game so far, and that's mostly on the option side of things. The game doesn't have any graphical options, and that is absolutely fine and acceptable. It's a very stylized 2D artistic type of game, and that is fine in and of itself. The game also performs absolutely great. I've had 0 starters, 0 drops, or 0 of any issue in regards to this game, including any possible bugs that you might encounter in many games like this, are non-existent. It's a smooth sailing experience, and it delivers what it tries to set out to do. That said, what does the game then set out to do? Well, let's go ahead and dive into the game, and I'll explain a little bit about what the game all tries to do, doesn't do, and the absolute stunning art style and world they have designed for Rain World. So when you dive into the game, one of the first things you'll notice is this very distinct and unique art style. It's not really pixel art, but it is very retro inspired, / 16-bit inspired. Definitely way higher fidelity than any of that, but still sort of that throwback idea with some more blockier type of aesthetic. Now beyond the aesthetic itself is the world design, because holy hell is it phenomenal. It looks like the developers straight up imagined a universe and then went ahead and built every single nuanced little thing in it. Now granted, some of these scenarios and scenery does get drab if you have to run over the same room a couple of dozen times in, but it is made up for this fact by the variety of different rooms, chambers, configurations, enemies, creatures, vistas, and basically everything in between. Every single room is crafted with exquisite detail, and while it has a certain level of procedural generation, I think, it is still very finely honed, with every room interconnected to other rooms, and each having a unique set of little things you can go to and see and remember it. None of the rooms really flow into one another in being a forgetful mess. Every single room you go to, even using the map, you can see it, has its own atmosphere, its own ideas, sort of conveys its own little tale of what happened, what is going on, and what it's supposed to be. And I'm not sure how the developers were able to accomplish this, but every single chamber I went to was a new experience, a new challenge, a new piece of eye candy I could look at and enjoy. Be it clean water, be it poisonous water, be it billowing piles of animals and creatures attacking me, or be it a waterfall cascading with sewage. Every single chamber, room, and area I went to looked absolutely stunning. And they did this using a sort of rusty and outdated aesthetic that really feels very cluttered when you first look upon it, but the more time you spend with it, the more nuanced and detailed it becomes, and the cleaner it also becomes. You sort of filter out all the extra bits surrounding it. Everything is sort of pops to the foreground that matters. And there's very little ambiguity in what you're looking for, what you're not looking for, and the things you can interact with, for the most part. There were a couple of spots in the game where I was trying to pick up a rock or a stick, or I threw something at a bat to kill it, and then so I can eat it as food, which I'll get into in a little bit, and then it would drop somewhere in the foliage and I wouldn't be able to distinguish it from the background areas, which is a bit of an annoyance. It's a very minor one compared to the overall feel and aesthetic of the game. The entire idea of this cute little slug cat creature and these little fruit pieces, and it's sort of like gobbling on food to survive hibernation, and all this little cutesy stuff is really contrasted very, very well by this very grim and dark and foreboding world all around you. I have not seen many games pull it off this well in terms of detail or nuance in world building and art design. Very, very good. As I said, PC performance is actually stellar, and it should be. But you should also note that because of the resolution issues, you might get some upscaling problems associated with this sort of thing. At the end of the day, if you're playing on very high resolutions, you may notice some pixeling and things that look a little bit too grainy for your pleasure. And I've certainly noticed it on my 1080p display, and your higher end display might even make it worse. So keep that in mind. But playing it on the resolution provided is a excellent proposition that looks phenomenally beautiful. Moving on with that, we're going to take a look at the creatures and everything that Will sort of tries to convey in terms of gameplay and everything around that. There are a couple of different things here that do bother me about this game a little bit. The first one is the control scheme. Now, I already said that I don't like the way key bindings are done, and I definitely don't like the way the game is heavily built for a controller. But one of the most annoying things is that a lot of the time I feel like I have very little control over my movement and where exactly I'm going when I try to do a jump or position myself to do something because of the way the controls feel so imprecise. And in a platformer, tight controls are everything. Just having cutesy art and cutesy art style just doesn't bring you to it. And having a very intricate, detailed world where every step of the way you want to look around, enjoy the vistas, explore, jump on ledges, sort of figure out what is going on in this free-form movement. But every time you come across a ledge or a cliff or something you have to scale, so this little piece of dreads builds in me because I know I have to do this very, very tedious and annoying process of fighting the controls and fighting against the game to sort of get what I want to achieve. And that is never a fun proposition. Now maybe on a controller this works better. I wouldn't know. We're on a PC channel, so we're going to focus on the PC controls, which is mouse and keyboard. And the game really does not perform up to par with those controls, which is a damn shame. And moving away from the controls and art style, there's obviously the gameplay itself. Now, as I said at the start, the game is a survival platformer, exploration game. It's sort of ambiguous in what it tries to do. But the most important core tenet of the game is that there is a cycle, and you can check that cycle by pressing the map button, and every time that cycle runs through, you have to find shelter, or you will die through the torrentful of rain, EA Rain World. And to go into hibernation, you have to eat food. You can eat up to 7 food, and you need a minimum of 4 to go into hibernation. In the early game, this is not too big of a problem. You can just go ahead, eat a couple of bats, eat some fruit, but the further in the game you get, the more scarce food becomes, the more scarce resources become, the more scarce save points become, and the more dangerous enemies become. So it becomes a more dangerous proposition to stay out longer, or you might need to balance exploring something, progressing a narrative experience somewhere in the game, which is in the game, or running back to a hidey hole just to get some food and hopefully find enough resources in the areas you already dried up in previous incarnations during various days previously. It's a very interesting concept of trying to balance freeform exploration with a need and a sort of driving force behind you, forcing you forward due to resource scarcity. I do like this mechanic quite a bit, even if it frustrates me personally quite a lot. When I'm playing a game about exploration and navigating and narrative experiences, I enjoy doing that in a calm manner. I don't like having a large amount of obstacles thrown in my way in regards to many of these things, and the things of Rainworld is that it does throw a large number of obstacles, enemies, and various different things around you, all over you, so you can sort of come over all these hurdles. And this is not a negative to the game so much as it is a personal preference that I enjoy. The game itself does a phenomenally good job of upscaling the difficulty level as you progress further. As I said previously, because of the way the controls are so annoying to use, this may not seem like it is the case. The very first time I had to cross a chasm where I had to jump 3 or 4 times to the left, or I had to time a longer jump with a charge up, I had to do that 3, 4, 5 times in a row before I could finally get it done because the controls were so fiddly. Now I have it under the knee and I understand the gimmicks of the controls, I can do it much more precisely and much more often, but even then I still get some issues here and there. Again, this isn't a negative so much to the gameplay of the game itself, or the way the world is built, or the cohesion of the entire thing, it's only a critique of the controls themselves, and that is a damn shame. Now, moving away, what is the game all about? Well, the game tries to be sort of ambiguous in what you're supposed to do. It basically says, you're a slug cat, go explore, enjoy the world, survive. But there is a definite narrative consistency and narrative arc in the game, and the little helper that you see on screen popping around, the little orange-yellow dude, shows up here and there pointing you to a direction. His entire purpose is to point you in the direction of the large narrative arcs, hidey holes and safe spots you can find, and generally going to these is not as straightforward as just following the yellow brick road. It is a little bit more complex than that. But because of this little narrative experience being forwarded to you, and step by step this little creature pointing you in the right direction, you still don't lose track of what you're trying to achieve. And you don't just retread the same 5 rooms time and time again because you're lost or confused. There is a path forward. Now granted, the game doesn't explain itself very well, and certain core mechanics I only got after 2 or 3 deaths. I figured out what they were going on. If you die, a day resets, so you don't get the save point where you left off. Every time you rest in a hidey hole, your day progresses, and based on that, certain puzzles are available or unavailable. And moving forward with that, you get these cutscenes and areas of introduction in the world with sort of hologramic expressions that you do need to pay attention to because they explain other stuff yet again. And the game never really explains all these things, it sort of lets you wander in, explore for yourself what the hell is going on. And while on one hand I can appreciate this sort of hands-off approach to storytelling and narrative experience as well as gameplay, I personally don't like it as much as when I have a cohesive story where a finely crafted experience is handed to me as opposed to me having to piece it and puzzle it together based on clues here and there because I never know what I'm missing. Again, this is a personal thing and not so much a critique to the game itself, but it does hamper my enjoyment yet again of this title. Which brings me to my final and biggest point. Raincat has a lot of content, a lot of dynamic, diverse rooms with a lot of configurations, backdrops, experiences, but the base gameplay experience really boils down to running around, room to room, eating food and hibernating. There is no real combat in the game. Yes, you could throw an item or a rock at an enemy and sure, you could kill an enemy if you really worked for it, but it's not really designed around that. And a lot of the issues with the game I have are because of the way the limited control scheme, even when it's annoying to use, still provides some challenge here and there. But here, all I'm doing is running around gathering food, surviving yet another day, moving to the next room, the next chamber, the next puzzle, the next narrative experience I can find, only sit back and passively enjoy that experience before moving on to yet gathering of more food and more rooms. I don't really find that compelling gameplay, and while the narrative experience drives you forward to experience more of this world, and to learn more of what is going on here. What are slug cats? Why were you separated from your family? What is going on with this world? How are things built, designed, and what is the history here? All very finely crafted and very well delivered, still doesn't compel me as much as, let's say, a finely crafted RPG would. And that is a damn shame because the game is finely crafted. It is smooth, it is a well-tuned experience, and the art style itself just oozes personality. Overall, I have very few complaints about this game, except for the fact that, well, it's not as compelling as I would like to have it, and the controls are very fiddly. So, in conclusion, where Rainworld shines is in its unique art style and art design, its amazing world building, and hands-off narrative approach. And if you enjoy this sort of experience coupled with the resource-based pushing you forward to explore, to experience, to expand, then Rainworld is a fantastic game for you. If you want a more controlled or a more narrative-driven experience, a more directed experience, then this is definitely not the game for you. RainWorld is extremely hands-off, and what it tries to do, it does a fairly good job at. But it's not trying to reach out and give you a cohesive story, it's not trying to push you forward into a highly narrative arc. All it does is provide you the world and a few core mechanics to work with. And if you don't enjoy that, not the game for you. But if this art style is intriguing to you, and if you think you like exploring worlds, finding out histories and experiencing narratives, then I suggest you check out RainWorld because, well, the art style speaks for itself. It is phenomenally beautiful. And the gameplay itself isn't bad, just not as compelling as I would like to have it. If you're interested in RainWorld, it comes out on March 28th on PC, and you can find the link in the description below. And if you like this video, press that like button. And if you didn't like this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose, and leave a comment. Tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like. We want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button down below and we will deliver. And until then, I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here, GuyLogicGaming.